The storm had not yet reached the sky, but it had already broken inside her. On a cold November evening in Denver, Colorado, Natalie Harper stood on the rooftop of her apartment building, gripping the edge of the railing, trying to steady the tremor in her breath. Just hours earlier, the man she had spent 6 years loving had looked her in the eyes and told her she was not enough. Not because she was unfaithful. Not because she lacked ambition or compassion. But because a doctor had informed her that her chances of conceiving naturally were painfully slim. And for that, her boyfriend, who once swore he'd love her through anything, turned away without hesitation, leaving her heart split in two. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us of the good still left in the world, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. It helps more people find these stories. Natalie walked back inside, feeling the emptiness echo behind her every step. The quiet of her apartment was louder than any scream. She had always pictured her life differently by 30, a partner who cherished her, maybe children, maybe the simple joy of laughter filling the rooms. Instead, she sat at her small wooden desk, staring at a future that suddenly felt wiped clean. She wasn't angry about being infertile. Illness and limitations could happen to anyone. What crushed her was the revelation that the person she trusted most loved the idea of a family more than he loved her. But life has a way of redirecting people toward what they truly deserve, often through paths carved by pain. That redirection began 3 weeks later, when Natalie received a surprising email from Hawthorne Innovations, one of the largest tech development companies in the western United States. After months of job hunting following her layoff, she was offered the role of executive support coordinator. The position meant stability, a chance to rebuild, and a salary that could finally pull her out of the tight corners she'd been squeezing herself into since the breakup. She accepted immediately. The first day she walked into the company's towering glass headquarters, she was struck by its grandeur, sleek marble floors, high ceilings, and an air of disciplined urgency. But what struck her even more was the quiet tension in the eyes of her new boss, Mr. Lucas Reed, a man known in the business world for his brilliance, his discipline, and his guarded mystique. He was only 38, with a dignified presence, dark hair slightly tousled at the edges, and a constant look that hovered somewhere between exhaustion and gentle restraint. Rumors whispered through the office halls said he was a single father of 4 children, raising them alone after losing his wife in a car accident 2 years earlier. Natalie didn't know what to expect working for a man with so much weight on his shoulders. But she quickly found herself drawn to the quiet strength in his demeanor. He wasn't cold, just tired in a way that only a person who had loved deeply and lost profoundly could be. Over the weeks that followed, she learned his rhythms, how he preferred schedules laid out, how he paused before signing anything important, how he kept a framed photo on his desk of his late wife holding their youngest daughter on her hip. It humbled Natalie to realize that behind the powerful title and suits was a man quietly battling grief while keeping his family and company standing. Her role required occasional coordination with his home staff, and so one afternoon she found herself at the Reeds' countryside house just outside the city. The place was warm and full of life, children's drawings taped on the fridge, toys scattered across the living room, and the faint smell of apple pie drifting from the kitchen. Lucas's children, Caleb, Grace, Noah, and Hannah, were energetic, curious, and instantly attached to her gentle presence. Caleb, the eldest at 13, tried to act mature but still watched everyone with protective eyes. Grace, 11, had an artistic spirit and shy smile. Noah, 8, loved asking questions faster than they could be answered. Little Hannah, only 5, had curls bouncing everywhere as she followed Natalie around like a shadow. As the weeks turned into months, Natalie's visits became more frequent. What started as work-related check-ins slowly became invitations to birthday dinners, school events, and quiet evenings helping with homework when Lucas needed an extra hand. She always kept a respectful distance emotionally, reminding herself that this was her boss, a man healing from loss, with 4 children who needed stability, not another heartbreak. Yet, despite her efforts to remain professionally detached, she found warmth blooming within her whenever she saw him with his kids. Lucas wasn't just a CEO with a stern reputation. At home, he was the kind of father who carried Hannah on his shoulders after her dance recitals, who knelt beside Grace as she worked on her drawings, who listened patiently to Noah's endless questions, who gave Caleb the space to grow without forcing him to act beyond his years. Watching him, Natalie often felt an ache, not because she longed for children she feared she might never have, but because she saw a family held together by genuine love, and for the first time since her breakup, she felt hope rather than emptiness. The turning point came during a late winter week, when a major project collapsed due to an unexpected supplier issue. The stress pushed Lucas beyond exhaustion. Natalie found him late one night in his dimly lit office, sitting alone with his hands clasped and his jaw tight. He admitted he didn't know how much longer he could juggle everything, running the company, being both mother and father, keeping himself composed for the world. It wasn't a confession he offered lightly, and it wasn't intended as a plea for sympathy. But it was real, raw, and honest. Natalie sat across from him, her voice quiet but steady. She told him she understood what it felt like to break silently, to carry heavy truths alone, to feel like everyone expected strength when all you had left was tiredness. She didn't tell him about her infertility, he didn't need to know that yet, but she let him see the genuine empathy carved from her own wounds. Lucas looked at her then, really looked, as if seeing her for the first time in full clarity. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't dramatic. It was the beginning of trust, something far deeper. From that night on, their dynamic shifted. He depended on her more, not out of weakness, but because she made things feel lighter. She became a presence of calm in both his office and his home. His children adored her and started asking when Miss Natalie would come over again. Even the air around the house changed whenever she stepped inside, softening, settling. But the part that surprised her most was how Lucas started seeking her presence outside of necessity. He invited her to join them for simple things, watching a movie with the kids, helping build snowmen on the weekends, sharing coffee after long workdays. She tried to remind herself that she was just a support system, a helper, a friend. But the more she saw of him, his patience, his tenderness, his devotion, the harder it became to ignore the quiet feelings forming inside her. And then came the evening when everything shifted irreversibly. It was early spring. The cherry trees around the Reed home were just beginning to bloom. Natalie was helping little Hannah braid a ribbon into her hair when the child turned toward her with innocent eyes and said she wished Natalie could stay forever. The words struck Natalie deeply, sweet, sincere, and painful all at once. Lucas was standing by the hallway when Hannah said it, and his face softened in a way she hadn't seen before. Later that night, after the kids were asleep, he walked her to her car. The sky was deep blue, the scent of blossoms drifting around them. He thanked her, not for her work, not for her efficiency, but for bringing warmth back into a home that had been quiet for too long. His voice trembled slightly as he admitted he found himself looking forward to her visits more than he should. And for the first time, Natalie allowed herself to feel the truth she'd been hiding. She had fallen for him, not because he filled an emptiness, but because he showed her a kind of love built on respect, patience, and kindness. But before anything more could grow, she knew she had to tell him the truth about her infertility. She expected the confession to end everything before it began. When she finally shared it with him one quiet evening, her voice cracking with fear, she braced herself for rejection, for the same shattering pain she had endured months earlier. Instead, Lucas stepped closer, his expression full of empathy, not shock. He told her that love wasn't measured by biological ability but by the heart's capacity to care, nurture, and stand beside someone through life's storms. He reminded her that he already had children, four incredible souls, and that he wasn't looking for someone to give him more. He was looking for someone to walk with him. Someone like her. Near the end of this story, if it touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us continue creating meaningful stories. Months later, after patience, healing, and slowly growing love, the Reed family wasn't just Lucas and his 4 children anymore. It was Lucas, his children, and Natalie, who brought with her not perfection, not answers, but a heart willing to love them all fiercely. She went from being a woman abandoned for something beyond her control to being cherished by a man who saw her worth with clarity and gratitude. She became a mother not through biology, but through presence, warmth, and the kind of love that cannot be measured by blood alone.